Good morning, good evening, and good day, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the E-commerce Expander Secrets podcast. My name is Ricky Hooker. I'm the General Manager at Global E-commerce Experts and Expandly. And I'm joined today by Sander van Gras from Global E-commerce Experts Netherlands in Hoofddorp in Holland. Hi, Sander.
Hi, as Ricky said, my name is Sander and I work in the Netherlands and I'm the 3PL coordinator.
Sander, tell us a little bit about the Netherlands 3PL. So this is GE's warehouse over in the Netherlands. Tell me a bit about what the 3PL is predominantly doing.
Well, the Netherlands 3PL is basically like a distribution hub for your goods which you would like to sell online on various marketplaces. And generally speaking, when it starts, of course, by receiving goods, whether that will be through a container directly from the factory or smaller parcels through courier send over, depending on the scale of your business, of course. These then get inbounded on various different ways, depending on, once again, the size of the inbound. This will be inbounded on box level, unit level, pallet level, and also depending on how you plan to ship out your goods, whether it's going D2C, B2B, FBA. And basically, once the goods have been inbounded, their orders will be placed, and these orders will be fulfilled to the various different channels.
Thanks. So, tell us, you're the 3PL coordinator over there in Hoofddorp. Tell us a little bit about what the 3PL coordinator does. What's your role on behalf of the sellers?
Basically, I am the linkage, generally speaking, in between the physical work that's being done in the warehouse and the communication to our customer sales representatives. So whether that is that we find something about the stock, there's an issue or there's a problem, or the goods have unexpectedly arrived, then I'm the one who's feeding that information back to the customer sales representatives who will inform customer of these kind of situations. Besides that, I am also in a supportive role with the day-to-day operations when it comes to some admin work for the warehouse and the customer.
So really, you're the kind of eyes and ears of those sellers abroad. That must be quite reassuring for them that you're there looking after those sellers' properties, their stock and their property when it's perhaps a long way away from them.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the sellers themselves. What types of sellers are you dealing with? What sort of stock are you looking at? What sort of sellers are they?
Well, the sellers that we have in our warehouse are, generally speaking, quite diverse. We have all different type of goods, ranging from food supplements, toys, electronics, drawing items, various other things, clothing. Yeah. Basically, a little bit of everything. Yeah. And there's also
Think about the types of things that when the stock arrives. So sellers are sending to you in cartons or in full container loads or less container. How's stock typically arriving?
I think the majority of the goods, in terms of like quantity of product wise, we will receive the most in container loads, like a full container load or a less than container load. But in terms of like individual shipments, we will receive the most like loose carton shipments. So like a couple boxes, 5 boxes, 10 boxes. Obviously, we receive more shipments, more smaller shipments, but unit wise, we receive more units through container, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay, well, look, that sets us in a little bit about on who you do and what you do. So thanks for that, Sander. I think as part of the E-commerce Expander Secrets podcast, we're talking about sellers growing their businesses overseas. And at the point that your business is growing overseas, of course, you're either going to be drop shipping your goods from another venue, you're either going to have your own infrastructure, or you're going to need a 3PL. You're going to need somewhere that's going to stage those goods for the orders that you create overseas. In its most simplistic form for sellers, those you may be selling on Amazon or selling on one of the larger marketplaces. You want to take your business to new countries, new marketplaces, and specifically new regions. Where Sander's sitting there in the Netherlands is really the central point from a logistics perspective for Europe. not including the UK, specifically for Europe, and we'll touch on that bit later on. So that kind of sets the scene on why we've asked Sander to come onto the podcast, to give you a little bit of real nitty-gritty insider knowledge on what's actually going to happen. You know, you've perhaps listened to some of the podcasts in the past about the types of activity that you will need to do to get your business to expand internationally and into Europe, say. But actually, this is a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of what has to happen to be able to make that happen. So we've heard about Sander, we've heard about the role, we've heard about the types of sellers. Let's get under the bonnet a little bit of how this works. Tell me about the types of changes that you need to make to stock that comes from, let's use an example of a US-based Amazon seller that sends some goods into the warehouse there, and the next step is that they want to put some of those goods into FBA in, for instance, into Germany. Tell me about what you're encountering day to day as that coordinator. What kind of things are you what kind of problems are you looking at, and what kind of things are you feeding back to them?
Basically, once an order has been placed in through Seller Central, and that lands in our warehouse management system, we will obviously pick the order, and depending on the size of the order, how many boxes it is, the customer can choose whether they want to ship pallets or boxes. If they want to ship boxes, then we will either the customer provides us with shipping labels, or we will generate the shipping labels ourselves. And depending on pricing and where it's going, we can select the best courier service for the destination and where it's going, according to the right price and the right service levels that they need for their courier and the package to arrive, so it arrives in the right condition and in the right time frame. Besides that, we need to make sure that the boxes are within the Amazon maximum size and weight, which is 63 by 63 by 63 is the maximum dimensions, but we like
that's centimeters, yeah, not inches.
Yeah, centimeters. Yeah,
centimeters,
sorry.
Yeah. We've got to talk metric here.
Yeah, so centimeters, but to be safe, we generally recommend to our customers that the maximum box size that we use is 60 by 60 by 60 centimeters, because sometimes what will happen on the road, if a courier will put it on the bottom of heavy boxes, they will bulge out on the sides. We've actually had it happen that Amazon refused a box that was exactly 63 centimeters in one dimension, and because it was bulging out like a quarter of a centimeter, something like this, they rejected the whole shipment and the seller got fined for it. So in order to prevent that, we generally recommend our customers to keep their boxes maximum 60 by 60 by 60 centimeters. Besides that, they have a maximum weight of 23 kilos. And generally speaking, the same thing applies here. We like to say maximum 22 kilos because, something can happen, something can get added.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a bit less likely that it will get heavier than with the dimensions, but it's still better to have a little bit of headroom, because we all know how Amazon can be. So and then generally speaking, we will just apply the provided FBA labels and the courier labels of choice, and then the order will be collected on the same day and go out.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a few bits that I just want to pick up on there before you go on, Sander, because I think there's some really interesting parts there. I think the first part there is the client can ship by pallets or by cartons. In your experience, using this example of, for instance, a German FBA warehouse, enormous Amazon marketplace in Europe, probably the biggest single marketplace in Europe is Amazon in Germany. Typically, what's faster and easier in terms of getting goods into those FBAs? Is it cartons or is it pallets?
100% cartons. Cartons is faster and it's easier because as for cartons, you don't need to schedule a delivery slot with Amazon. Whereas if you're shipping pallets, Amazon needs to be contacted with an Amazon reference ID that will need to be used to ask them when can this be unloaded, when we can unload our goods, basically. And then depending on how busy it is on the Amazon site, like the local fulfillment center, they will decide, you can unload tomorrow or you can unload in 3 weeks.
Well, I mean, I think that really shows why 3PL that's on the edge of the Amazon ecosystem makes sense, doesn't it? Because you can drip your stock in, carton by carton for a fixed fee. Okay, so that part's interesting. The second piece that I wanted to touch on was that for a lot of these sellers, and that is why I grabbed you there on the whole centimeters piece. For a lot of sellers, the actual goods themselves are going to be in imperial. They might be in pounds and ounces in terms of the weights. The dimensions are going to be in inches and feet. Just tell me what the difficulties that you might find with making master cartons, for instance, for those carton deliveries, and for building pallets actually on that point.
Well, the thing is that I have noticed is that I don't know what the exact conversion rate is, but we have quite a few sellers that have boxes that are over 40 centimeters on two sides, and then over a little bit over 40, so 41, 42, and then a little bit over 60 on one of the sides, so 61, 62. And from what I can understand, that it's because of a certain conversion rate from the inches that it just falls under the maximum rate. The problem with like those specific dimensions is that Euro pellets are quite small. Pretty much every other country in the world uses like close to US size pellets. And in the UK, they use very close to US size as well. US is a little bigger, but Euro pellets are significantly smaller, and they are a lot smaller. They are a lot long. They're not longer, but they are quite a bit narrower, which means that if you have boxes that are like over a certain size, they will fit really poorly on the pallets, causing your storage charges to go up, because we will end up with a bunch of like 70% filled pallets because of those, and that's because a Euro size pallet is 80 centimeters by 120 centimeters versus a UK size pallet which is 100 centimeters by 120 centimeters. And if I recall correctly, a US size pallet in centimeters is 102 centimeters by 122 centimeters. So the difference between UK and US is very negligible, whereas the difference with the EU pallet and UK size pallet is very big. So if you were to have boxes that are, for example, 42, 42, 62, you cannot fit two in the 80 centimeter direction because that will be 84. So that doesn't fit, so you can only fit one. And the same goes for the 62 pallets, you also cannot fit two. So that will mean that you will lose a significant amount of storage space, and that will mean that GE will need to build more pallets, thus increasing the storage charge.
I guess this is another good when you're talking about cartons being easier to get into FBA. I guess there's another good reason why sending or storing your goods in a carton level is a more efficient way from that side of things as well. That's a good, interesting point. So I think it's definitely worth there as a e-commerce insider expansion insider secret, converting your shipping, your pallet loads and your pallet numbers in terms of storage directly in from a US to a European model, and also slightly, but from a UK model. There's certainly not a direct crossover, so you will end up with, as you said, what you're suggesting is you're going to end up with more pallets here in Europe for your stock, for the equivalent amount of stock that you might have been holding in a warehouse or in your own warehouse in the US. That's interesting stuff. So I guess at that point, the goods that have been arriving from sellers who are based in the States then might need to be repalletized onto more pallets, and goods which come, for instance, full container loads from China, they'll be built out onto pallets in Europe. Okay, tell me a little bit about the pallets that are. So we've ascertained that the cartons are the right route in, and of course, then I'm guessing you get tracking on every carton rather than just on a pallet level as well. So that's, I guess, another bonus. Yeah. But beyond that situation, tell me a bit about the preparation of the pallet for Amazon in Germany.
So basically, if pallets, we have an order that came in for X amount of boxes, and we are picking all of those, and all of those boxes are stored on carton locations in this instance. we will pick the order, and then depending on the size of the boxes, we will decide how we can fit the most boxes on the pallet the most efficiently. So we will build up the pallet, and there are some very, very strict rules in Germany and actually all of Europe. And in the UK, it's a lot less strict. But in the rest of Europe, basically, they're really strict on how they want to receive their pallet shipments specifically. Basically, you're not allowed to have like a quarter of a centimeter of overhang. If you have like a quarter of a centimeter that you think, oh, it's perfect, it fits perfect, it's probably going to get rejected when it arrives physically on the facility, and then everything will come back, inducing high costs, and nobody wants that, and delays, of course, as well. Then, so everything needs to be within the pallet. So generally, what we will end up doing, if we have boxes that fit, you would think like perfectly on the pallet and they're straight up from the side, I would rather than reduce the number of boxes per pallet than risk it and ship it, because maybe in transit the driver has to make an emergency stop and they shift a little bit and they're off it on the side, and because you never know what's going to happen in transport. So I always tend to be on the side of caution rather than taking a risk with Amazon, because I've had pallets come back and I thought that they were perfect, but they weren't according to Amazon. Then the next thing is they're really strict on how it needs to be wrapped. Basically, everything needs to be wrapped at least 3 times on the pallet itself, so on the wooden pallet and the boxes, so you have like a clear seal between the two. And even if one corner of the pallets, let's say someone drives against it with a forklift and it rips on the corner, they will also reject the shipment. The pallet is maximum 180 centimeters high, and once again, if it's 181 centimeters, it will also get rejected. The pallet weight is a maximum of 500 kilos a pallet. So once again, if it's 501, it will also get rejected. And besides that, if the pallets need to be loaded in a specific manner. So with Euro pallets in a normal lorry, you can fit 3 Euro pallets lengthwise next to each other. So you have 80 centimeters, 80 centimeters, 80 centimeters, which makes 240 centimeters, which is the same length if you were to load 2 UK size pallets with the 120 centimeters in the truck. So it has to be loaded like that. So 3 pallets next to each other. If it's not loaded like that, it will get rejected. If there's other goods in front of it, and they arrive on site on the dock, and they open it and they see even an empty pallet or something in front of the goods, it will get rejected. Basically, everything has to be perfect. If you're 10 minutes late for your time slot, they will not offload, and it will be rejected. It's starting to be a little bit of a recurring theme over here.
Yeah, I'm starting to get scared actually, but I think the pieces to take out of this is, oh my goodness, you need an expert who's got your back for the nuances of putting your goods into Amazon. And if there's any way, shape, or form doing cartons, clearly I think that is the but I appreciate the amount of detail that you put there in terms of the ways and means that they're required to do that, because it really shows where sellers will be perhaps thinking that the process of shipping their goods is kind of happening, a long way away. Actually, the technicalities of what required for that requires a fair amount of expertise. Let's touch on this last question, Sandra, if you may. Let's touch a little bit on for these sellers who are sending goods. Maybe they're selling directly to the consumer. We haven't touched on some of that, but they're selling D2C and they get returns. So talk to me a little bit about firstly the D2C for maybe a Shopify or WooCommerce or Shopline seller. How does that work if they're selling to other countries?
Basically, how it works in Europe is that every country that's a part of the European Union, which is not the same as Europe, so it's important to have those two. If someone is talking about EU, that is not Europe, that's the European Union. And basically the European Union is a trade agreement between almost every country in Europe, or a lot of the countries in Europe. And basically it means that it's all, there's no borders. And we as a warehouse in the Netherlands can export freely without having to import, export, or have any export documentation attached to any shipments to Germany, to France, to Spain, to Sweden, to Finland, to Poland, to Italy, and a lot more countries. So shipping wise, and as from the UK, you don't have that luxury anymore since the Brexit. So they will have to import to all of those countries and pay import duties, and that's why it's so vital to have a 3PL also in the Netherlands or in any EU country for that matter. So you can, basically transport freely between all European Union countries.
Okay.
As for
there's lots of content that we've created on what that bit looks like. I think the most important here from D2C is that once you've mapped your final mile courier costs for shipping for different countries in Europe, you can ship them from one location for the whole of Europe, except for the United Kingdom. Maybe we'll do a separate podcast on what that bit looks like. But fundamentally,
and Switzerland.
The non-EU countries. But when we're talking about Europe as an opportunity for an e-commerce seller who's looking to expand, we are talking like 500 million people here, which are a lot of people that buy things online. So that's interesting. So your data still going to be handled from that same warehouse, and those items can be skimmed off the same pallets or cartons that you've been sending in, put into pick faces to be able to be sent out direct to consumer. So that bit's cool. That part's actually, after all the horrors of making your pallets ready for Amazon, that part's relatively easy. Let's talk very briefly about what that looks like with goods that come back with returns. How are you typically handling the return for those sellers who send things out and they're unwanted by the buyer?
Basically, if something for whatever reason comes back, it can be because the courier has made several delivery attempts and the person wasn't home. Can be because the person has rejected it, can be for various reasons, but the package comes back to us, and if the package has never been opened, we will open the package, find the packing note still, the dispatch note still in the box, of which we can derive the original order number, and then it will be like physically inspected to see if the product is still in a sellable condition. So there's no dents, there's no labels over it, there's no other damages, there's no water damage or what have you. When the warehouse operator has determined that the product is in sellable condition, they will then book it back into inventory where it can be sold and shipped out to another customer. If the product is damaged or there's a sticker on it that we cannot remove cleanly, or it's dented or something, that means the product will be booked into a quarantine location. The customer gets regular updates from our warehouse management system telling them what they have in quarantine. And basically stock in quarantine is offhand, meaning that if there's an order placed, the warehouse management system will not pick that specific product. So it's separate from their good inventory. And based on that list where they can see what they have in quarantine, the customer can determine what they would like to happen. Maybe they would like us to clean the product, remove any labels, or they would like us to donate it to a local charity if it's really unsellable, or they would like us to dispose of it, recycle it, and they can tell us what needs to happen with those products.
So there's a grading process in events, and then presumably for the goods that maybe returned to the seller, they're collated together and then sent back in one lot, or they're resold. Yeah.
It's just a matter of, is it sellable? Yes, it goes back into good inventory, and if it's deemed unsellable, it's up to the seller's discretion what they would like to have happened with those goods. We often try to lean as much as possible to donation or worst case scenario recycling, due to the climate impact of this, trying to dispose as little stock as possible.
Okay, so I think that gives us a good insight into the kind of complexity of what things are looking like in terms of moving goods into the region. Sandra, thanks for your insight. I think there's some really good tips in there, and not in terms of what's required to be prepared, ready to be said to be selling internationally. And I think there's some really big pieces in there, especially the changes from imperial to metric and the type of complexities of moving goods into online marketplaces like Amazon when you're a long way from home. I think hey, if I was a seller abroad, I'd want you to know that a guy like Sander had my back in terms of looking after my property and stock when it was a long way away from home. So, Sander, thank you very much for your insight. And is there anything? Is there anything else from the Netherlands which you which would help an American seller?
I think it's important to, if you have big plans on also becoming a big seller in the EU marketplace, that when you start creating your master cartons, either you make sure your master carton dimensions are good to use on both Euro pallet and US pallet if possible. Otherwise, I would suggest that you create 2 different box sizes, one for your EU marketplace and one for your US marketplace. That way you will never have the issue where you're racking up high storage costs due to your box sizes.
So that's very insightful. Thank you very much for your input. We'll be back again in a few days' time with more e-commerce expander secrets, where you'll be able to get more insight about how to grow your business internationally and especially into Europe. You can find out more about growing abroad on our website, globalecommerceexperts.com, and also how you can do it with one click using the software portal expandly.com. You can follow us on social media, and you can also download the podcast from wherever you choose to do so. So thanks very much for listening all the way through to the end, and we'll see and hear you perhaps on the next one.